Wake up there, Buttercup, because it's coming for you. I was hopeful, and that was foolish. Confidence. I really, really hope you're right. I don't think that that's going to happen at all. But I'm not, here to support that or all the other stuff. I really believe in a woman's right to her own reproductive freedom. Believe that that's going to come, but I can imagine it. You don't want 0% inflation. Are you going to sacrifice people getting a living wage so that you don't pay more in milk? Not that I'm white. I'm still white. If you think camps were only something that they had in Europe, you're mistaken. Really, really smart in terms of, and I'm kidding, that's not really smart at all.
Hard Rock Lunchbox.
Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the Hard Rock Lunchbox. And if you're watching on YouTube, of course, the top 20. How's everybody doing today? I hope people are doing better, given the state of the world, given the way a lot of people were feeling yesterday and the night before. A lot of stuff is going on in our small little world here, and there's definitely a bunch of stuff we can talk about, maybe some stuff we should talk about. Maybe some things we should just leave alone, or maybe we should try and figure out some perspective. That latter one is what I'm looking to hopefully try and do today, because I think it's probably the smartest way to handle and deal with all the information that's kind of coming at us in this really kind of contentious and weird sort of time. But before that, as almost always, let's just get to some light housekeeping. The brand new top 20 hopefully is out today. I've had one hell of a morning, so I have not actually been able to verify that it's actually out. But it should be the Halloween episode that was actually on Halloween. And I do talk about the importance of government interference. I talk about cheeseburgers, the Hard Rock Lunchbox oath, and the importance of supporting creativity, which I still hold to be true. I still find that to be part of my daily existence. I think it is a good thing. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I really do hope you check it out, like and subscribe. I know I've been really lax on getting to some of the comments there. I cannot explain the level of busy that I've been lately, and I don't even fully know why it is. I don't know what the differences are in terms of my productivity and the requests that are being made of me. I think it's really just a question of just being overwhelmed so often, and it is affecting my ability to move through those things. I keep getting pulled from project to project to project, plus I've got all these other things that I need to get done, smaller things that may or may not be super important, or may not even be super time consuming, but they still need to get done. For example, it was late last night when I just remembered I needed to send the weekly soccer email. That's something I do on Mondays, and it was late Wednesday evening, and I was like, I completely forgot to send that. So that kind of stuff, right? It's not earth-shattering or life-threatening or anything like that, but it is important, and I need to do it, and I'm not getting to these things. Some of it possibly feels like I'm just being forgetful, and that is always possible when I'm being overwhelmed by sort of external things that are going on in my existence. Just because to use a really annoying term, I just lack the bandwidth most days to be able to handle everything that's coming at me. It's stunning. It is something I bring up often. Sorry, my computer just yelled at me. It is something I bring up often in discussions about just the amount that kind of comes at me, and a lot of times I just don't see it. I don't expect it, and I do find a lot of it is unnecessary. Obviously with everything that's going on in the world right now, vis-a-vis the election and stuff like that. There's a lot of real negativity for everybody, right? Everybody's kind of experiencing, but there's a lot of stuff coming at me directly that is completely unnecessary, and it's just taking up time that I don't need. I do appreciate anybody that took a minute to check in on me yesterday and last night. My feelings about the election and my political ideology are very public and very well known. But I was not in a place where I was, in any way diminished by it. I was saying recently that one of the things that probably has helped me out over the past couple days is I really fully expected this to go the way it did. I was hopeful, and that was foolish, but I was hopeful that people would, kind of rise to the occasion and do the right thing. But as I say often, I spend a lot of time out in the world and different parts of the world than other people. Maybe not physically, but certainly virtually. And that gives me some insight into what people think and what people say. I also have a pretty diverse group of people that tend to speak. I will say that my closest confidants, and inner circle always seem to be very aligned with me politically, and my politics are generally not even driven by politics, right? I speak about ideology, political ideology a lot, and how that's okay. People have different ideologies in the world, right? And those discussions are really quite good most of the time to have, because it's understanding. If you think about political philosophies over the years, right? Just all of them, democracy, monarchy and fascism and dictatorships and stuff like that, representative democracies, congressional democracy, parliament, those kinds of things are very, very sort of interesting in the way to govern. And you have different ideologies within whatever system you're in. I used to talk about the Bush administration and Dick Cheney specifically, who people just sort of refer to as one of the most evil people on earth. And I don't agree. I do believe that the Bush administration lied us into war in Iraq, and I think that is despicable, and I think that should be at least noted by history. But that was all very predictable and very knowable because of an ideology. What is different now, in my opinion, is I just don't see any particular political ideology. What I see is social and moral warfare that is going on, and those are the things that worry me the most. But I really did expect this. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago that was sure it was just going to be a complete blowout for Harris. She was just going to overwhelmingly win. And I said to him, I was like, I really, really hope you're right, but I don't think that that's going to happen at all. There's just too much and too many people that are just not really interested in that product. And there's lots of discussions to be had, whether or not Harris was the right candidate, whether or not Biden should have stayed in, whether or not Biden should have dropped out sooner, whether or not there should have been a more robust primary. I cannot think of a single person that could have run this campaign effectively and beat Donald Trump just on sheer war chest and political name recognition and even political capital. I don't see it. The only ones I could really think of that were electable would have been Shapiro from Pennsylvania and Andy Beshear from Kentucky. But just, because I think that's true. Bernie Sanders, of course, has the name recognition, but I don't think we're ever going to elect a socialist in my lifetime. It's just got too many connotations. Even though pretty much everything Bernie stands for, if you listen to it, you'd be down for it. It just makes so much sense. So, but I'm not, here to support that or all the other stuff, but because there's other issues with it. But it all makes sense. The costs are where I tend to differ with people like Bernie Sanders, and that's fine. But yeah, so I was expecting this. I truly was expecting this. I was ready for it, and I was bracing for it. So I'm not nearly in a bad space politically as people might think, given my rhetoric and stuff like that. Everything I believe in is still true, and I still think it's important. When they were doing all the exit polling, it was really just immigration, the economy, and abortion, right? So one of those is super important to me. I really believe in a woman's right to her own reproductive freedom. I cannot even fathom the thought of telling a woman what to do, but that really was not all that long ago where that was pretty commonplace, in the history of mankind, and even in America. It just really wasn't all that long ago. The Equal Rights Amendment, not far out of my lifetime there. So it's, and even civil rights and stuff like that. They were marching in the streets for civil rights, not too long before I was born. It's not out of the realm of people's conventional wisdom and conventional thinking, especially like, Southerners and stuff like that were still separating water fountains in the 70s. Like, that's just not that far away. So to think that, like, we've evolved as a people in that time, I think is maybe borders on naive a little bit, but I think it's more hopeful in rose-colored glasses than I think is necessary. So, I'm tempted to ask my Trump-supporting friends, like, what it was specifically for them, because I keep hearing, like, from commentators and articles and stuff like that. Not that I'm, drowning in those things, but I was interested in a couple of the exit polls to see, like, kind of what the reasons were. And a lot of it is funny to me because looking at it kind of objectively, like, the abortion thing really is something that just happened. All three of the Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court justices that were just appointed, all three of them said that Roe v. Wade was settled law and it wasn't something they would undertake to overturn. They lied. They lied to Congress in their appointment hearings. I think anybody that was watching knew that was coming because it was the stated goal of the Republican Party at that point. And that's exactly what happened. Alito and Thomas have both signaled that they're interested in removing the privacy rights that I think was like Griswold v. Connecticut, that was the basis for, what you're allowed to do in your own bedroom, contraception usage, and of course, gay marriage and stuff like that, which I thought we were past as a country, but clearly we're not, because people just don't believe in those things, and they don't share, my belief, and they don't share a lot of people's belief. But a lot of people just don't care about, women's reproductive right. A lot of people don't think women should have it. I mean, if you go into J.D. Vance's background and, like, where he comes from, I mean, they're talking about repealing the right for women to vote. I mean, he's our vice president-elect, and he believes that there should be a conversation about repealing women's right to vote. That scares the hell out of me. Now, I don't know that could happen, but, it doesn't take much to have a constitutional convention. All you really need is 35 states to call one, and then everybody has to vote, and that's how you pass an amendment. Like, we could really get a constitutional amendment for, banning abortion. We could get a constitutional amendment repealing the women's right to vote. I mean, I can't believe that that's going to come, but, like, I can imagine it, because there are 35 states that are solidly red, and that could be on the table, and it really wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I guess it would surprise me, but I can definitely believe it. So those kinds of things are, like, weird, but that's the abortion thing. And then the economy, I don't really understand at all, because people are complaining about the economy, and I think that they're mistaken. I think what they're mad at is the cost of things, right? Because the economy, as it stands right now, has recovered from COVID. We're just hovering above 2% inflation, which is the gold standard, which is what you want. You don't want 0% inflation, because then things aren't growing. That's wages, costs, that kind of stuff. That is how an economy grows. You do need some level of inflation. Zero inflation would throw us into a recession and then skyrocket it all, which we don't want. And I don't expect people to understand that, because people can't understand basic economics. They're not going to understand that. But that is the case. Also, we have the strongest economy in the world right now, and it's the best the American economy has ever been. Something like $32 trillion in the economy. Like, it is a staggering amount of power and money involved in the American economy. So the American economy is fantastic. Unemployment is hovering around 4%. It's about what you want. Like, it's just bananas how good the economy is doing right now. And people think the economy is doing badly because milk costs more. Well, milk does cost a little bit more, and there's lots of reasons for that, including corporate profits, corporort buybacks. Yeah, there's definitely some added costs for some of the places that have had increases in labor wages. But are you going to sacrifice people getting a living wage so that you don't pay more in milk? I mean, as selfish and self-centered as most Americans appear to be, like, I don't think they're putting those two things together. I think they're just fine with having somebody making $25 a day as long as they can get their milk for free. Which is funny, given the fact that one of Trump's promises is that he's going to deport 11 million migrant workers, which are responsible for most of those low-cost jobs and those low wages. So what do you think is going to happen when we hire, white Americans to do those jobs. They're not going to work for free. They're documented U.S. citizens. Like, they have federal protections. They have state protections in a lot of places. Like, what do you think is going to happen to those costs? But I'm not really here to debate public policy with people that don't care to understand it. But I just thought that was funny that economy was playing such a high thing, and it's just not the case. The economy is fine, just the cost of things costs a little bit more. Okay. So then the last thing really is immigration. And that, to me, is laughable, because I think immigration is a terrible, like, the way it's set up and the way we run it in this country. I do happen to be one of those people that think we should secure the border or open it wide up so that people are free to travel like it was pre-1970. I think that might be problematic these days, but I think it is something, because once an undocumented illegal alien arrives in the United States, they're not exactly inclined to go back home, because it's very difficult to get back in here. And whether you believe me or not is irrelevant, but that is the way it used to work. Migrants used to just kind of come to the farm states, and they would work, and then they would leave. That's pretty much pre-1970 immigration policy in America. But I don't think that's going to fly again, because it's just too much of a hotbed issue. But what I do think is interesting is that we had a really good border bill sponsored by the Republicans that Donald J. Trump had his allies in the Senate kill. He unsecured the border. He wasn't even president, but he wielded so much power over his, suck boys in the Senate that he killed that bill. Right? So now he's going to come in with his incredibly draconian, immigration thing, and I think that's going to be a disaster, because I think it's going to crash Big Agra's economy, and as food goes, a lot of the country goes, and I'm worried about that for real logistical reasons, and because almost every economist has said so. It's not even really much up for debate. Like, even Big Agra is concerned about it, because it's a bunch of their workforce. Like, who do you think picks strawberries, blueberries, and stuff like that? Like, it's not your kid. It really isn't. Most of your kids don't really work. Like, they don't. The white teenage unemployment is way down because they're too overscheduled in other things. So they're not even really working. And certainly not working as much as they did when I was a white teenager. Not that I'm white. I'm still white. But I thought that was funny, because that's like the number one thing, like fix immigration. So, and that's what they want, and that's what they're going to get. So, because of the election results, because it was such a clear mandate, in my opinion, and most people's opinion, like, I feel like that wing of the American electorate is now quite emboldened and empowered to speak. And we on the resistance cannot like it all we want, but it really is the way things are in a representational democracy like we have here. The ones on the left lost the election. I'm sure there are reasons that people can debate for whatever, but they did. They lost the election, and the conservative majority, I guess, has won the election. So what does that mean? I thought we would take a quick couple minutes before I end the top 20 to sort of go over some sort of basics. This is from Politico. I find them to be very somewhat neutral on a lot of issues. They do excellent journalism and excellent coverage. They do it in quick, to-the-point, non-fluff pieces, which I find interesting. I find very little opinion in it as well, so I tend to read a lot of Politico. But this is an article. It's actually a series of articles. And all it really is doing, it is talking about the Trump agenda and what to expect from his second term. Because he's said certain things and made certain campaign promises. Some are, bad, and some are less bad, and some are interesting and might even be beneficial to some of us. I mean, I know he's proposed no taxes on tips and overtime. That does not affect me directly, but, I know plenty of people that have worked in the service industry and don't like paying tax on their tips. I think that's a good idea. He has a proposal that he has talked about for making interest payments on American-made cars, making those interest payments tax deductible. That's interesting. That's a good approach to keeping people buying American, which creates manufacturing jobs here in America. we'll see how it goes. But I mean, like, there are ideas like that are not as horrible as other ideas could be. So Politico put together 9 basic things that Trump has said he is going to do on either day one or his first 100 days. I mean, he has said the very first thing he's going to do is fire Jack Smith, the independent prosecutor that has been going after Trump for documents case January 6th. I think that's all but done. I can't imagine that on January 20th at 12:01 or whenever the inauguration is, like, he's not out of a job. Fully expect that. But so these are the 9 things. So immigration and the southern border. The president-elect has vowed to build huge detention camps, implement mass deportations at a scale never before seen, hire thousands more border agents, funnel military spending towards border security, and invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to expel suspected members of drug cartels and criminal gangs without a court hearing. Now, that's suspected, so you can just make the accusation and suspect it. For context, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is what they used in World War II to round up the Japanese and put them in American internment camps. If you think camps were only something that they had in Europe, you're mistaken. They did it here, too, to the Japanese, which is a horrific stain on the American legacy. Trump has also said he would end catch and release, which is the release of migrants into a U.S. community while they await their immigration court hearings, and restore Remain in Mexico, a policy from his first term that required asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their cases were processed. He also hasn't answered questions about how exactly he would round up all these immigrants or how he would fund these plans. He could also face some challenges hiring extra border agents because they have a lot of trouble with recruitment. So it's hard to say how he's going to do all of this. I did see an article where he said he was going to give border agents a $10,000 retention and signing bonus and a 10% wage increase, but it's also going to take tens of thousands of more law enforcement and border agents to actually round up 11 million people. That is not a small ask, and it's going to cost us a tremendous amount of money. Keep in mind, at the same time, we are basically deporting the people that are doing a fair amount of the work for our food and our services industry right now. Think about that. Think about how many people that you know may or may not be undocumented or may have some questionable documentation status that are actually doing those jobs. It's a big deal, something to consider. Tariffs. Trump says tariff is his favorite word in the dictionary, and it's likely he'll move quickly on new trade restrictions that he promised during the campaign. The president-elect said he will impose between a 10 and 20% across-the-board tariff on all $3 trillion worth of U.S. goods imported and a 60% tariff on all Chinese goods. That would dramatically expand the duties he imposed during his first term on tens of billions of dollars worth of steel and aluminum from all these Chinese goods. This is a big deal. I talked about tariff wars several shows ago. I don't need to rehash it now. But do keep in mind that we pay tariffs. It's a tax on the people that bring stuff in, like Walmart. And they are going to pass on at least some of that cost to us. So do keep that in mind. All you Timo and Shein shoppers, yeah, that's coming. And that's not up for debate. That is coming. Ukraine, China, and Middle East. So Trump has said he wants Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza by January should he win the presidency. Similarly, he insisted that the war in Ukraine needs to end, though he offered no pathway on how to pause hostilities for either one. Trump's views on Gaza differ from the Biden administration. Biden pushed for Israeli troops to ultimately leave Gaza and for Netanyahu to agree to a two-state solution, which is what the international community has basically agreed on. But Trump previously pushed a plan that will allow Israel to gain greater control over Palestinians, which I don't know how that's going to fly. I know I did see Bernie Sanders making a compelling argument to people about why the Harris plan, even though if you didn't like what the Biden administration was doing in Israel, why it was still better than what Trump was suggesting, because Trump is basically going to give Netanyahu the green light. I think that's going to lead to a war, an all-out war with Iran, but that's just speculation. And about Ukraine, but when asked if he wanted Ukraine to win the war, he wouldn't answer. He blames Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky for the war and threatened to stop investment in the country if he wins. Zelensky seems to think that that's not going to happen. I guess we'll see. It seems like a big deal. If Ukraine falls, it's going to be really bad for Europe, and it's going to be really bad for all the surrounding countries there. So keep an eye on that as well. Abortion and health care, none of this should come as a surprise to you. Now, Trump If Trump is true to his word, he's about to turn health policy upside down. Trump has promised to let vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is a complete idiot, by the way, quote, go wild with health in his administration. A major role for Kennedy would shift Republican agenda away from policy debates over legislation and regulation toward a more fundamental one about the government's role in medicine. Kennedy is touted to debunk claim that vaccines cause autism, written a book accusing former NIH official Anthony Fauci of conspiring with tech mogul Bill Gates and drug makers to sell COVID vaccines. The dude is completely all over the place. Now, he is interested in promoting alternative medicine. I will wait to see what he classifies as alternative medicine, because I really do think Kennedy is a complete moron. On abortion, Trump has tried to distance himself from his role in appointing 3 of the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe. He not only denied that he would seek federal legislation to ban or restrict abortion, but he also said he'd veto any ban that reached his desk. He seems to be a big believer in states' rights on the issue. I'm hoping he's going to stick to that and be a big states' rights guy for privacy and gay marriage as well, even if the Republican legislature tries to pull any of that stuff. Because if it does fall to the states, then while I feel bad for those 30-plus states that are in those red zones where protections and freedoms are the job of the government and not necessarily yours, here in New York and great states like Illinois, Colorado, and California, it's not really a problem, and we have stuff enshrined in our Constitution. So while it is true that New York State is becoming more and more difficult to live in, do keep in mind that the price for that freedom definitely has cost to it. There's other things in here, but we are running late. Student debt and college affordability, and race and gender in schools. Trump has threatened to get rid of the Department of Education. He is not interested at all in waiving student debt. In fact, what he wants to do is go after the radical left accreditors that are responsible somehow for driving up school costs. It's just a business like every other business. So, you know, what I don't know what his plan is, and it doesn't look like he knows what his plan is, because there's a lot of stuff in here where he just wants to squash all that stuff. The only thing I did see that was of any interest to me is that he is looking to give up to like $10,000 vouchers to homeschool. Now, that doesn't affect me anymore because my kid is no longer homeschooled, but it does affect a lot of what's going on in the middle of the country where you have these white nationalist homeschooling programs. They're going to be able to opt out of public school, take these white nationalist and Nazi programs, and now get money from the federal government to do it without a Department of Education to kind of oversee what the agenda actually is. Unless, of course, they're talking about anything trans or critical race theory, in which case he's looking to withhold funding for your school district, which is really, really smart in terms of, and I'm kidding, that's not really smart at all in terms of actual education. He is, in terms of housing, he has pledged to ease regulations. He hates regulations, to help builders boost the supply of housing to bring costs down. The Republican National Committee has also endorsed the idea of selling off federal lands for the construction of housing, which Utah Republicans have pushed in Congress. Anybody that is paying attention at all knows that when builders do these bids for these big houses, these big housing complexes, only a small portion is ever for affordable housing, because all the rest of it is luxury apartments, because the rich keep getting richer and they have the money to pay for these things. So if you honestly think there's going to be investment in public housing, like real public housing under the Trump administration, you are completely mistaken. So if you're somebody that does not own a house and does not like their prospects of being able to afford a house in the future, I got news for you. You have at least 4 more years of that, and it's probably going to get even worse, which sucks. And then, of course, taxes. So tax cuts worth $4.6 trillion from Trump's first term are set to expire at the end of 2025. Trump has pledged to make those tax cuts permanent, while at the same time proposing wide-ranging new cuts, from ending taxation on tips to allowing deductions for auto loan interest. I mentioned that at the top of the show. Congress will have to figure out which of his proposals are actually doable, even if they try and come up with the money to re-up the existing tax cuts currently on the books. This is what people don't seem to understand. Taxes is what actually pays for things in this country. It is the lack of tax collection, which is why our national debt is so high. It is also plans like these that have the Government Accountability Office saying that Social Security is going to lose solvency within 5 to 7 years. That's Social Security. That's not even just old people money. It's Social Security, it's welfare, it's Medicare, it's Medicaid, it's disability, it's SSI. I know a lot of people that receive some form of government assistance because there is some disability in their family. That is going to be gone, yo. That is how we pay for those things. And I don't understand why people don't understand that, especially people in those situations. I know rabid Trump supporters that are absolutely going to be losing money in this fight, and they just seem to be absolutely clueless to it. Well, wake up there, Buttercup, because it's coming for you. I personally do not get any government assistance for absolutely anything, so the laughter you hear when that comes will be me, I assure you, because obviously if you're not smart enough to protect something that should be very important to you, then you don't deserve to have it. I've talked way too long. It's already past 12:30, so we've done way too much Top 20, but I did want to give you some sort of sense of what to expect. Like I said, not all of it is horrific. Some of it is what we all expected. Some of it is, might have unintended consequences. Some of it could be of benefit to a lot of us, and that's not the worst thing. And I do think that, being sad and lamenting that things didn't go your way has its place, but it is really time to start stepping up and preparing for what's coming. And perspective is going to play a huge role in that. Also, it's time to really figure out what it is that you want. What do you want out of your country? There are 70 million people just voted to impose a strongman and probably single-party rule in the greatest democracy in America. Think about what that means. Think about your constituents. Think about your peers, the common electorate. What does that mean to you? Is it time to sort of keep being quiet because you don't want to piss off a Trump supporter? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And all you're really doing is shattering any chance of improving your lot in life and getting your morals and values advanced in this country. Being quiet is not going to help you. I've been saying it for years. And even when I've needed to take breaks from shouting at the rain and fighting the imbecilic people I run into in my daily life and on social media, it needs to be said, because highlighting just how stupid some people are, or misinformed if they're not stupid, or how their interests are not aligning with mine, I think is important. And that brings me to my last point, where I just don't ever believe that it's worth challenging relationships, friendships, or otherwise with family and friends and other people over politics. I think it's important to disagree on politics. The political ideas are important to discuss. However, what I've found in this last election cycle, and it's really been kind of creeping in since Obama was elected, is that it is okay to maybe not enforce those friendships, those relationships with people that don't share your moral values, right? We don't willingly hang out with child molesters. We don't willingly hang out with murderers, rapists, wife beaters. I'm not a big fan of tax dodgers at all. So maybe these people we don't need so much. And it's a question that everybody can just ask themselves, but it's not a political one. Make no mistake, I do not care who you voted for. I care why you vote and what's important to you. And honestly, what matters more is what's not important to you. And why is that? I understand that the American electorate is getting incredibly selfish and self-centered. They're very interested in America first. They're very interested in me first. That's not how I was raised. That's not how I'm going to raise my kids, and that is not how I'm going to inspire the people around me. I think it's a disgusting way to be in a civil society, and I'll just continue to speak to that for as long as people listen. And to be perfectly honest, I think you know that I'll speak way after people stop listening. It's time for the rest of the show.
This wasn't yours to push away.